Welcome back to Prep Recruiting Insider, PRI here at NOLA Motorsports Park in Avondale. I'm your coach for PRI, Rick Gailey, along with Renee Nato, the Prep Recruiting Insider. And we are joined today by a special guest from St. Thomas Aquinas, Mike Stant, who is now filling the role of Dean of Students.
Dean of Students,
You've,
yes, sir.
You've had some great titles,
I've
Mike.
had some great titles, no doubt, Coach, no doubt, great titles.
Dean of Students and offensive line coach at St. Thomas Aquinas. Thanks for being here with us
Coach,
today,
it's
Mike.
my pleasure to be here.
Mike, you know, your football background and 25 years coaching, you played under Bobby Conlon and Brother Martin, and then the Nichols under Sonny Jackson and Phil Greco.
Right.
Phil I know very, very well, and Bobby Conlon.
Sure.
How did that help you, mold you into your coaching profession and where you are now?
Well, you know, it all started back with my dad. You know, like how most dads take their son out and throw the ball with them. My dad would take Pat and I out, and then Chris later, and we'd like block the garbage can, tackle the garbage can. So my dad was very influential. And then, you know, I had some great park coaches. A guy by the name of Alan Nagel, his son Jeff played at Brother Martin, and then Larry Betancourt, who coached us in the Raiders. But, you know, all those guys were very influential in my coaching career. Just guys that you pick up things from. But, you know, the most important thing is that those guys teach you character, teach you to work hard, teach you have a lot of pride. So all those guys have the same attributes. They're just great coaches and just great men. And they were very interested, very invested in the program, very invested in the players. And I think that's one of the things that Coach White does a great job of at St. Thomas. He's very invested in the program. You know the job he's done with. I really look at this a lot, Coach. You know, and you and I have talked about this. It's not what you do with the great players. You see these guys on the couch. You know, coaching Ed Alexander. I mean, you know, that's one thing. But you know, coaching lower players, and I shouldn't say lower, but not as talented players, and getting them involved and finding a spot for them. And you keep asking, what do you think is the thing that could get us to win the state championship? You know, it's not going to be the 1 through 10 players. It's going to be the guys who are like 16 through 22, who you need to make like one play or 2 plays or things like that. And Coach White does a great job of making sure that every player is a part of the program. And I've seen that with my own son, because my own son is kind of at the lower end of that spectrum. But we've found a role for him. He's involved, and I think if we are fortunate enough to stay injury-free, to stay away from turnovers, to get the right people at the right spot, I think that's going to be the difference. It's not going to be the 1 through 10 guys. It's going to be the backups. It's going to be the lower level plays that we need to make, not big plays, just solid plays to give the great players a chance to be successful.
And that's what's fun about coaching the offensive line.
That's exactly right.
More than anything else, because not only with the coaches Renee talked about, but Carmen Moore you worked with at Hammond, Donald Career, and I know that they all appreciated you a great deal. But because of how hard you coach the offensive line and how meticulous you are with it, you still work the lineman camp in the summer, so you keep on top of the latest things. And Coach, you talk about how much fun it is to get down, roll up your sleeves with those guys with the offensive line.
Well, that's basically, if I could do one thing, that would be it. I would coach the offensive line. And I've been very blessed to have been around some guys who are excellent offensive line coaches. And that starts with Kenny Farrell. And basically, all my techniques and philosophy begins with him. I've also worked under a guy named Larry Zerline, who I think is still somewhere in the NFL. I think he was with the Steelers, and then he was with the Cardinals, but just an excellent technician. And I was one of those guys who, I guess that's because my dad pushed me in that direction. I was never a guy who played running back or quarterback or whatever. I always played on the offensive line. And so, I've always taken a lot of pride with those guys. And it's a lot of fun to be around guys who are focused. And I'm really lucky. You met Kitch, who's our right tackle. He has 29 on the ACT. And then our left tackle, he has 30 on the ACT. And then, the 3 interior guys are really just hard-playing guys who take a lot of pride in it. And you know, it's easy to block for guys like Cam because you don't have to hold them for very long. But you know, just all the things that we've worked on for years basically start with they start with Coach Johnson at Brother Martin, and then move to Coach Farrow and people like that. But yeah, it's one of the things that I definitely take pride in.
In the last minute or so, Coach, got a facelift. St. Thomas Aquinas got a facelift with the stadium and everything. What does that mean to the community and the team?
Well, you know, we're definitely a football community now, you know, with getting the stadium. And I think Coach White has done a great job in 10 years of changing the culture there. I think for a while there, you know, we weren't as involved in football, but just having the stadium on campus means so much more than having to get on a bus and ride over there. And it's not really truly a home game. And I think especially the Chalmette game, which was the first game there, and the Jamboree were very special to the whole staff. You know, and you know, I just want to mention in the last couple of seconds, you know, it all starts with our principal. You know, Jose Becerra does a great job there. You know, both of his boys play football, and they're both excellent players for us, Brady and Jacob. And it definitely helps us to have a principal who's a football guy. You know, he played wide receiver at Chalmette. You know, he knows, he's coached before, so he knows some of the trials and tribulations of being a coach. And I think, you know, the stadium, the culture, all that starts with him, with Mr. Becerra. And he wants us to be successful. And you know, Coach, as well as anybody, if you have a principal who's going to be behind you, you have a chance. If you don't have a principal who's behind you, you have no chance. So, you know, when you throw that in, you know, you have a principal who's behind you, you have some great players, you have great culture, that all that equals to a chance to play in the Dome.
And real quick, you've seen it all from the public side, the private side. Is there any chance select, non-select gets back together in some type of format? We've got about 10 seconds.
I hope so, but I think, you know, just I think there's such a rift between the schools, which is very unfortunate because I think it's just a very couple of schools that really tip the balance of power. I really wish they'd come back together.
That's right. That's what we grew up with. For certain in the greater New Orleans area. That's Coach Mike Stant of St. Thomas Aquinas. He has seen it all from all different sides, somebody I have a great respect for. We'll be right back after a brief timeout here at Nola Motorsports Park in Avondale. This is PRI.